This discussion is on literacy across the curriculum, making cross-curricular connections. The language arts components are an excellent way to cover topics from other curricular subjects and still meet the language arts program of studies objectives. We can use literacy to help students make sense of what they are learning in other disciplines. Language arts is about reading and thinking critically, understanding the difference between fiction and nonfiction, or fact and opinion, and understanding various terms and concepts. I would like you to look at the following diagram. And I want you to think about how language arts is like a wheel. On the eClass homepage, there is a separate PDF document so that you can pull this up later, because I'm asking you to contribute to a forum discussion on this particular diagram. In the forum entitled Language Arts Simile, I'd like you to discuss how language arts is like a wheel. I'd also like you to include the ways that language arts is the center of the wheel and how language arts can inform each subject area discipline. We talked earlier in the term about the 6 dimensions of language arts and that literacy is much more than reading and writing. We also talked about the fact that there are many texts beyond standard books. Can you recall some of the other texts that students in a classroom access on a regular basis? They can include things like videos or tapes or CDs, magazines, cookbooks, the internet, music. There are various ways that students make meaning from a variety of texts. This is a good reason why we can and should see literacy activities extending beyond language arts. Many language arts strategies can be applied, taught, and refined while you are teaching other subjects. For example, social studies often relies heavily on text-based learning. Materials pertaining to your social studies unit can be taught during language arts, such as in a read aloud or a shared reading, or you can focus on particular reading strategies while teaching social studies topics through a textbook. For example, how do we find specific information without reading the whole book, such as using the index or the table of contents. Or you can teach students to use titles and subtitles and different parts of the organizational structure of books. You can also work on strategies such as what do you do when you come to a word that you don't know while you are learning about social studies. Crowhurst came up with 5 tenets of language across the curriculum. And they are that language plays a central role in learning, students are actively engaged in meaning-making processes, teachers work as facilitators and guides, all 6 language arts strands are involved in active learning, and students are encouraged to express and explore their understanding of concepts in the curriculum using their own language. Language across the curriculum stems from a sociocultural perspective. That means that students are actively constructing their own meanings through experiential exploration in social circumstances. Language should be exploratory and purposeful in the investigation of new concepts and questions. This discourages the stance of the student as a passive recipient of the material. When students engage actively, they predict, observe, discuss, read, problem solve, and write about their learning. Your textbook talks about the project approach to motivate students' learning. This involves creating a project or theme-based unit that incorporates a variety of language-based activities but meets many curricular objectives from other subject areas. I'm going to share a story about a project I did one year while teaching a grade 2-3 combined classroom. While I am talking, jot down where you think the project tied in with other curriculum areas. The project that we came up with in my classroom was to build a structure of some kind. The students decided that they would like to build a puppet theater, so we made plans using scale and measurement to come up with drawings. We read about puppet theaters, we flipped through some books just to see pictures, we looked on the internet of various puppet theaters, and each student developed their own idea of what they wanted the puppet theater to look like. We then voted on the various suggestions and came up with one plan, and then we set to work. We used big sheets of plywood and tape measures to draw the shape, and I did the cutting later using the circular saw. And then the students, with their safety glasses on, each had an opportunity to put it together with glue and nails. We screwed in hinges so that it could be adjusted and folded away when we weren't using it, and then the students painted a brick or a stone pattern on the outside to make it look like a castle, and that was the plan that they had voted on to make it look like a castle. We cut out our curtains, we sewed puppets, we wrote plays and performed them, we practiced readers' theater, we made puppets out of paper and a variety of materials, and we did performances for other classes. The students absolutely loved it, and they were so engaged. We covered huge portions of the curriculum areas in science, in math, in language arts, in art, in music, and the students did very well when I assessed them on those curricular objectives. We had a ton of fun, and we always had other teachers and students peeking in to see what we were up to that day. It was a fantastic and very meaningful project. Here are some of the pointers for integrating curriculum. Integration should make sense and not be a forced fit. It should be about connecting various curriculum areas, skills, knowledge, and content. It's about aligning curriculum in ways that allow different parts of the curriculums to function together. And integration can be done through a theme, a topic, a piece of literature, or even a concept. Integration is not about just using, for example, bear-shaped manipulatives in math when you are doing a unit on growth and change in animals. It requires deeper thinking and integration of topics. I've included on Moodle a reading of me reading the book Math Curse. What I would like you to do is one of your activities is to use the concept map included to think about ways that you could incorporate or integrate this book into using various areas of the curriculum. Do your best to think of ideas from other areas. I am aware that you're still learning about the other curriculums and that you haven't covered the areas in detail as you've done with language arts, but do your best and use your own experiences and background knowledge to draw upon ways that you can use this book. The concept map that I've included is a strategy that you can use in your own classroom to help your students organize their information. What I want to do is now move on to reading in the content areas. To quote your textbook on page 225, if we want the students in our classrooms to be critically aware, discuss ideas, and get excited about what they are learning, they need to read material that will both interest them and engage them in reading and writing for real life purposes. And reading nonfiction or information texts can do just that. We want students to transact with the text. Remember Rosenblatt's transactional theory, instead of just memorizing and reading. To help readers make meaning and construct individual knowledge, teachers can scaffold their background knowledge and language to help them access the text. Scaffolding is giving extra support when the material is above the student's instructional or independent level. Research proves that most of our out-of-school texts are nonfiction, for example, lists, maps, web pages, emails, letters, recipes. So it is important that you are paying special attention to nonfiction texts in your classroom. Many students will need instruction in how to use a nonfiction text, so you may need to teach about informational text structures and organizational features explicitly. Some examples are talking about the table of contents or headings and subheadings, how to read and understand photographs or illustrations, what types such as bold-faced words or italics or captions means in a book, also talking about the glossary or keywords. Don't assume that children come to school with experiences with nonfiction. Often at home, parents choose to read mostly fiction books because they're easier to read aloud and it's easier to engage in conversation about um, fictional texts. A good way or a good time for you to teach about informational text structures in your classroom is during guided reading or during shared reading. I want to briefly discuss multimodal text. Multimodal texts are interactive texts that may include sound, text, graphics, animation, and full motion videos. There are many ways that students can access technology to express themselves, such as blogs, digital storytelling, PowerPoints, web page creations, or even screencasting as I'm using now are some examples. The internet can be a way to promote the active construction of meaning. This also helps students to access the representing dimension of the language arts. Learning on and with the internet, as the slide that you're seeing now, promotes currency, meaning that learners have access to current information through newspapers, through research findings. It promotes relevancy, which means learners can choose lines of inquiry and pursue personal interests. There are many topics online that are cross-referenced. Immediacy, which means students can learn about events almost as they happen. It promotes multiple perspectives. There are often a number of viewpoints represented online. And multiple dimensions. The same concept or event is often presented in a variety of formats. For example, text, chat, video, or sound are often represented. The last thing that I want to, or before I move on to the last thing, I want to introduce you to a website called www.tolearn.ca. If you visit this website, you can view various ways to integrate the internet into many subject areas and how to promote cross-curricular connections. When you get to the main page of this website, look on the left-hand side and click on kidslovetolearn.ca. When you get to the next section, you'll see this bar across the top that shows the different curriculum areas, and under each curriculum area are different ideas of how you can incorporate online activities into your classroom. Here are just a few of the examples that they have included under the representing strand. That's something that you can explore on your own time. The last area that I wanted to talk about is writing across the curriculum. Writing is a way to explore ideas and to demonstrate understanding, but it's also a way to help us make sense of our learning. Let's take a look at some of the assumptions that happen in classrooms and how to incorporate writing across the curriculum successfully. When students are asked to use different writing forms across the curriculum, it's often assumed that they have had experience with them. Content area writing is often assigned rather than explicitly taught. So students need to have various forms of content area writing modeled and given guided practice with those content area writing experiences, and they need to be made explicit in order for students to be able to use them when they write in various curriculum areas. Structural features and specific vocabulary, which are particular to different forms of content area, also need to be taught. And there are differences between forms in terms of structure, and vocabulary needs to be taught to students in order for them to understand how these forms work, as well as when and why they are used. Many teachers are now using journaling in subject areas such as math and science to help students construct their learning. These journals serve as a place to think through concepts instead of as a place just to report. Journals also offer teachers a rich understanding of students' comprehension and aid in the assessment of curricular objectives.